Thomas, Percy and Stafford. The engines on the island of Sodor were very excited. The railway was being tidied up because a famous engine was coming to visit. The engines didn't know who was coming because the Fat Control was planning to surprise them. They all wanted the railway to look its best. At last the day came and the Fat Controller came to Tidmouth Sheds. The engines were all waiting to hear who was coming. "The famous visitor has now arrived," he said. "I want you all to make the visitor feel welcome."
"Who is it, sir?"
asked James. "I hope it's a big engine," smiled Gordon. "I will now tell you," said the Fat Controller. "The engine that is coming to visit is Stafford." The engines were very excited to hear this, but Thomas and Percy were puzzled. They had never heard of Stafford. "Who's Stafford?" asked Percy. "I've not heard anything about him before," put in Thomas. "Stafford is an electric engine," the Fat Controller explained. "He's a shunting engine who has worked on the mainland for a very long time." "He sounds like a very busy engine," said Percy. "He must have a lot of puff," smiled Thomas. Edward smiled at the little engines. "He doesn't have a boiler," he said. "He runs on batteries. He doesn't have a boiler, or tanks, or a tender." This made Thomas and Percy confused. "I don't understand," said Thomas. Then the Fat Controller had an idea. "Would you two like to go and meet Stafford?" he asked. "Then you can both learn a lot about him and show him around Sodor." Thomas and Percy liked this idea. "Yes, please, sir," said the two engines together. "Very well," said the Fat Controller. "Go and meet him at Knapford Station. He will be waiting for you." "Yes, sir," whistled Thomas. "Let's go," puffed Percy. So together the two friends set off to the station. As they puffed along, the engines were both thinking about Stafford. They were puzzled by how useful he could be. "How can an engine run on batteries?" asked Percy. "And how can an engine not have a tank or a tender?" pondered Thomas. "You'll find out soon," said Thomas's driver. "Stafford is more important than you both think," agreed Percy's driver. Thomas and Percy thought about this, and they both hoped that Stafford would understand their concerns. Soon they reached Knapford Station. They could see Stafford waiting by the platform by some passengers. Thomas and Percy were surprised. Stafford was a very small engine. He was painted brown, he had a cab in the middle of his bodywork, and his engine made a whirring sound. Then the children saw Thomas and Percy waiting at the end of the platform. "Hello, Thomas! Hello, Percy!" they called. Stafford looked and he smiled when he saw the two little engines. "Come and say hello!" called the station master. But Thomas and Percy didn't move. They were nervous about talking to him. Stafford looked at them. He was still smiling. "Don't be shy," he said. "I won't bite." Thomas and Percy looked at each other. Then they puffed forward to Stafford. They stopped in front of him, but didn't stand too close. "Hello, I'm Thomas the Tank Engine." "Hello, I'm Percy the Small Engine." "Very pleased to meet you both. I'm Stafford," said the famous visitor. This made Thomas and Percy smile, just a little bit. "Welcome to the Sodor Railway," put in Thomas. "We hope you enjoy your visit," added Percy. "Thank you very much," said Stafford. "I've heard all about the Sodor Railway and I've always wanted to visit." "Then let us show you around," offered Thomas. "We'll show you around the railway," suggested Percy. Stafford thought this was a wonderful idea. "I'll tell you about my work while we go around," agreed Stafford. Thomas and Percy agreed. They whistled cheerfully to Stafford and they set off out of the station. Thomas and Percy set off with Stafford following on behind. Stafford called out to both of them. "I'm not as fast as you two," he called, "so I may have trouble keeping up with you." Thomas and Percy thought about this. Then Thomas had an idea. Why don't I puff in front of Stafford and you puff behind? Suggested Thomas to Percy. That way, if something happens to him, we can push and pull him to places together. That's a great idea, Thomas, agreed Percy. What do you think, Stafford? I like it, he said. Let's do it. So when they got to the junction, the drivers explained the plan to the signalman. The signalman agreed, so after a while, Percy was soon ready and waiting behind Stafford. Stafford, is it okay to show you the coaling plant? Asked Thomas. Stafford thought that was a wonderful idea. Of course it is, Thomas, he said. I'd like to see how you steam engines get your coal. This made Thomas and Percy happy, so when the signal changed to green, the engine set off down the left track towards the coaling plant. It wasn't a long way, but Stafford was having a wonderful time, and he enjoyed having Thomas and Percy showing him the way. They reached the coaling plant, and in no time they could see that the yards were very busy with Neville and Stanley sorting trucks. It's very busy here, said Percy. Stafford looked around. He was impressed. You steam engines do know how to handle your coal, he said. Then Thomas had an idea. Stafford, there's someone I would like to introduce you to, he said. Oh? Exclaimed Stafford. Follow me, please, puffed Thomas. Thomas puffed away, and Percy and Stafford set off after him. Thomas puffed past some trucks of coal, and then stopped when he saw Hector. Hello, Hector, said Thomas cheerfully. Hello, Thomas, said Hector. Why are you so cheery today? Then Percy and Stafford stopped beside Thomas. Hector, this is Stafford. He's an electric engine, and he's our very special visitor, introduced Thomas. And Stafford, this is Hector. He helps to keep the trucks in order. Stafford looked at Hector and smiled. Hello, Hector, he beamed. You're the biggest truck I've ever seen. Hector was surprised, and he felt very proud. I'm the strongest truck around, he told Stafford. After a while, it was time to go. Time to go, said Stafford's driver. Goodbye, Hector, whistled Thomas and Percy together. Bye, Hector, said Stafford. It was a pleasure to meet you. Bye, Stafford, said Hector. Thomas, Percy and Stafford were back on the main line and on their way to the next site. Then Percy had an idea. Let's show Stafford the Little Western line, he puffed. Great idea, puffed Thomas. Duck would love to meet you, Stafford. Stafford gasped and then grinned. Duck, the Great Western Engine? He asked. I've heard about Duck. He's famous on the mainland. Thomas and Percy were now very excited. Little Western, here we come! Cheered the two engines. After a long journey, the engines arrived at Tidmouth Holt Station. They puffed through the station and towards the Seaside Rescue Centre. Duck was resting in the siding when Thomas, Percy and Stafford puffed up. Hello, Duck, whistled Thomas. This is Stafford, introduced Percy. He's our special visitor. Duck gasped when he saw Stafford. Hello, Stafford, he said. Hello, Montague, smiled Stafford. I hear you Great Western engines are always reliable. Please, call me Duck, blushed the green engine. I'm used to that name. Very well then, Duck, agreed Stafford. Your battery needs charging up, called Stafford's driver. We need to charge it up. Follow me, whistled Duck. So the four engines set off to the sidings. While Stafford was having his battery charged up, Thomas was telling Stafford about the time he had left his car behind at the station. Then Percy told Stafford about his race with Howard the helicopter. Stafford couldn't believe what he was hearing. You two have lots of wonderful adventures, he grinned. Thomas and Percy felt very proud of themselves. Then their drivers came to see them. It's time to go back to Nabford, said Thomas's driver. We must go, said Percy's driver. Thomas and Percy agreed and they told Stafford. I'm ready to go, he revved. So the three engines whistled and tooted goodbye to Duck and set off back to Stafford Station. On their way back, they saw Rosie. She was pulling passengers on the branch line. Thomas whistled excitedly to her.
Hello, Rosie.
He called, "This is Stafford."
Hello, Thomas.
Whistled Rosie after she puffed past.
I'm pleased to meet you, Stafford.
Stafford tooted his horn and watched as Rosie disappeared. Then they puffed past the school. Thomas and Percy whistled happily to the children as they passed by.
Look who's here,
called Thomas and Percy. The children waved and cheered to the famous visitor. "Hello, I'm Stafford." Then they passed through Marin Station. The station master waved to them to make them stop. Thomas blew his whistle to get the others to stop. Engines stopped in the station and the drivers and firemen spoke to the station master. "Spencer is stuck on Gordon's Hill," the station master explained. "Edward is away helping Donald and Douglas. Can you help, please?" Drivers weren't sure, but Thomas and Percy decided to help.
We'll do our best, sir, said Thomas. I'm afraid I'll have to puff in front of you, Stafford,
put in Percy. Stafford understood. He knew they were going to go on a rescue. Stafford had rolled into a siding so that Percy could puff past. Then Thomas and Percy set off for Gordon's Hill. Stafford followed on behind. He wanted to watch the rescue. Thomas and Percy found Spencer stuck halfway up the hill. They couldn't help but chuckle.
Oh dear, Spencer, teased Thomas. You have a habit of running out of water on this hill.
Maybe you should check your gauges before you run up this hill, added Percy. Spencer didn't say anything. He just sulked. Thomas and Percy puffed up behind Spencer and they buffered up to the coach. Do your best, Thomas, said Thomas's driver. We'll keep an eye on your controls. Percy's driver said the same thing, and Thomas and Percy took a deep breath and they pushed as hard as they could. Their wheels spun and spun. Their steam blew from their wheels. Then at last Spencer was moving. The train moved slowly up the hill. Stafford watched as the train slowly moved upwards. Go on, he shouted. Spencer and his coaches were heavy, but the tank engines wouldn't give up. They pushed and pushed and pushed. Finally, Spencer felt his wheels reach the top of the hill. Spencer then took control of the train and made his way down the other side of the hill. Beep, beep, thank you, goodbye, whistled Spencer. Beep, 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 the two engines whistled. Goodbye. They reached the bottom of the hill and they slowed to a stop to rest their wheels. Stafford rolled up behind them. That was impressive, he said. I've never seen two little engines push a big steam engine like that before. Thomas and Percy smiled. Then there was trouble. A whoosh of steam blew from their wheels. Their drivers were worried. You're out of water, said Thomas's driver. So are you, Percy, called Percy's driver.
Oh no, groaned Thomas. We'll never get to Stafford Station now.
We're stuck, moaned Percy. Now what are we going to do? Thomas and Percy didn't know what to think. Stafford was worried for the two engines. So an idea came to him. I'll push you two to the station, he revved. Thomas and Percy were surprised.
Are you sure you can?
asked Thomas worriedly. We're both heavy engines put together, added Percy. Don't worry, smiled Stafford. I've shunted heavy trucks before, so just leave it to me. Stafford was coupled up to Thomas and Percy, and he got ready to take up the strain. Are you sure you can push them? asked his driver. I'm sure, replied Stafford. These two need help, so I'm going to help them. It's a long way though, said his driver, so be careful. Stafford agreed, and his driver climbed back on board. Stafford took a deep breath and then gave a mighty push. Then Thomas and Percy were on the move. The cavalcades moved slowly and carefully along the line. Thomas and Percy were heavy, and it was a long journey, but Stafford wouldn't give up. He was determined to help. "I can do it! I can do it!" he panted. The driver checked his battery. He was worried that they wouldn't make it. "I will do it! I will do it!" huffed Stafford. Thomas and Percy were surprised by this. They thought Stafford may be small, but he is certainly strong. At last, Thomas could see Stafford Station ahead. There were lots of people waiting on the platform. "We've made it!" cried Thomas. All the visitors watched as Stafford pushed the two engines into the station. He was tired, but he felt very proud of himself. The Fat Controller was surprised to see this. "Stafford, did you push Thomas and Percy?" he asked. Thomas and Percy were very worried. They were sure the Fat Controller would be cross. But Stafford explained to the Fat Controller about them rescuing Spencer. He then told him about his trip around Sodor and about all the fun he had. The Fat Controller was very happy to hear this. "Well, I'll be," he gasped. "Thomas and Percy, I am very impressed with the both of you. You gave Stafford a most enjoyable trip." Thomas and Percy were very happy to hear this. "Stafford certainly helped us as well," Thomas grinned. "He showed just how useful he really is." "Thank you, Stafford," cheered Percy. "You're a hero." Stafford was surprised, and he chuckled. "Me, a hero?" he asked. "If anyone's a hero, it's you two. You two have helped me to enjoy my day today, and thanks to you I made lots of new friends." "I think you are all heroes," smiled the Fat Controller, "and I truly believe that all three of you have proved yourselves to be really useful engines."
"Three cheers for Thomas, Percy and Stafford!"
cheered the children. All the visitors and staff clapped and cheered. Stafford's cheeks went red with delight, and Thomas and Percy felt very proud to have made a new friend.